Well, you're watching the CBS News Texas stream. I'm Carmen Blackwell here, joined by First Alert Meteorologist Michael Ottavino this morning. And Michael, we have got to talk about the extensive damage that we have been covering that happened in Mineral Wells with those storms that hit last night. We know this is in an area west of Fort Worth and Palo Pinto County, and the damage that we've been seeing live with our CBS Texas chopper flying over this area is just truly remarkable.
Yes, you know, Carmen, it is definitely remarkable to see all of this widespread destructive damage. I mean, we saw countless severe thunderstorm warnings yesterday. We saw tornado warnings. Based on the radar, it certainly looked like a tornado moved through. And based on what we're seeing, you can certainly see what looks like tornado damage across their area. So nothing is official until the National Weather Service goes and surveys the area. They survey the damage. They take a look at, you know, what the damage indicates, if it was whether or not it was straight line winds, which would be indicated by some of the trees. But if you look at all the damage onto roofs and buildings absolutely collapsing, I mean, Carmen, you know, to say that was from straight line winds would be a stretch. I mean, it looks like a tornado moved through, and I reached out to the National Weather Service this morning, and based on climatological data, what they saw on radar, and based on the damage, you know, what we're seeing, they said winds could have been anywhere from 100 to 140 miles per hour. Again, not confirmed, but a rough estimate of, you know, what could have caused some damage like that, and that would be an EF1 tornado to possibly an EF3.
Wow. When you see damage to this extent, and again, our CBS Texas choppers flying live over a lot of the damage that we're seeing this morning in what looks like a residential area, you think about how this area is home to about 15,000 people.
Oh, yes.
Okay, two were seriously hurt. We know that they, of course, are being treated for their injuries this morning, but when you see damage like this that is done to multiple different structures, homes that almost look unrecognizable, which you can see here is one of these homes there in the center of this view, is just the roof is almost completely blown off, lots of debris in this area. But when you see winds that are this high, we see down power lines.
Yes.
We see and experience possible gas leaks within this area too. And then you also see lots of debris there, again, across miles and miles of a stretch of mineral wells here. So we do know that there was a curfew that was in place this morning until about 6 a.m. and has since been lifted. But right now, we're also waiting to hear more from officials there within this area. That is supposed to happen later on this morning. So again, we'll be tuned in to that conference and bring you the latest coverage there too as well. But people within this area, Michael, obviously just walking outside their homes this morning, surveying the damage and thinking, my goodness, how do I pick up the pieces and also make sure that my family is safe here? Because when we're talking about damage to this size, when you walk outside your home or you come back from, you know, perhaps if you evacuated yesterday and you're coming back within this area now that the curfew's been lifted, you're seeing, you want to make sure that you're safe too.
Oh, that's above all things. You know, they're still doing, you know, search and rescue operations too to, you know, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed there are no fatalities there, you know, from people maybe trapped in the rubble. But, you know, we saw that warehouse that collapsed, but fortunately they evacuated. That's why, because they had advance notice, they issued the warnings, and that's why when you hear the tornado sirens, when we say to, you know, get to an interior portion of your home, to stay in the bathroom, be away from any windows, you want to be away from, definitely not in any mobile homes, you know, this is why, because, you know, winds of over 100 miles per hour could certainly level a mobile home or flip it over, you know? So overall, you know, we saw those severe thunderstorm warnings issues yesterday, and we're going to take a look. We have Trevor Sohaki, who is live there in Mineral Wells. Trevor, you know, what are you seeing?
Hey, Michael, I'm hoping you can hear me right now, but really we had to get pushed out of the area that we were in. We were by that big industrial area that is behind me right now. It's a little bit difficult to see, but that industrial area is really where a lot of the damage was located. Basically took out a lot of the plants and the factories that were around there, really just leveled them to the ground. You couldn't make out much of anything, but like you said, thankfully they were able to get a lot of those employees out of there in time. Thankfully, there wasn't as much fatality, or there was no fatalities, I should say, as of now, as they continue the search and rescue efforts. Now, why they had to push us out, they said that the first responders were coming in, and they said they needed to get all of us out because those first responders were coming in. So if I had to guess what was happening, the power crews that had been here basically all night long, all morning long, those power crews wrapped up and they now are leaving, and they're making room for the first responders to come in and continue to do those rescue, those recovery efforts to make sure that in case there is anyone, like you mentioned earlier, stuck under that debris, they're able to get them out, because right by this industrial area is a neighborhood that also saw some impacts from the storm. So again, we're hoping, and the police chief, I spoke with the police chief earlier, he told me right now, no fatalities. We're obviously hoping that continues, but of course we don't know what's going to happen, because like you both were saying earlier, you know, a lot of people are going to be walking out of their homes this morning wondering what happened to mineral wells, but they also should be thanking their lucky stars, and I'm sure they are thanking their lucky stars that they are able to walk out of their homes this morning and are able to stand on their own 2 feet, because so often we see with tornadoes, if you don't make it into that interior room, if you don't make it into a basement in time, it can have a lot worse impacts. And so a lot of people here, I'm sure, very thankful that despite all the wind, despite all the rain, despite all the hail, they are still able to stand on their own 2 feet, and they still have a lot of their loved ones around them this morning. Back to you guys.
Right, Trevor. And I mean, this is best case scenario. When you see damage to this extent, when a storm like this passes through, to not have any fatalities is truly, again,
absolutely.
best case scenario. So, Trevor, you have been within this area all this morning, and we actually spoke to a resident that lives within this area. Tell us what people are saying as they're waking up now that the sun is up and they're seeing just a surveillance of all this damage within the area.
I mean, it's really just shocking to everyone here, right? You'd think, okay, there's a tornado warning, it's happening. I mean, we see tornado warnings all the time here in North Texas. You almost never think it's going to happen to you until you're, like we spoke with someone last night, they're riding on the school bus and suddenly look out their window and they see what appears to be clouds circling, clouds funneling, and what they said was a tornado. I mean, 100 to 140 mile per hour winds are nothing to joke about. I don't know about you two. I've reported on hurricanes before, and those kind of winds are nothing that you can joke about. They are very dangerous, very extreme. And I mean, you go around, and even if you're just driving down the side of the road, there are still plenty of trees that are toppled over, plenty of areas that are blocked off, a lot of blocked off areas actually, because overnight they weren't sure what downed power lines there were, if there were possible gas leakages, obviously debris all over the road. So of course that is what a lot of people are waking up to, going, what the heck did I wake up to? What happened overnight? What did I maybe even sleep through? Whatever it might be. So I'm sure still a lot of shock and awe from the folks here. But again, like we said, thankfully, a lot of the damage was limited to this industrial area behind me. And yes, that did cause millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. That is going to be a serious hit, obviously, to the local economy here and to the people who work at those plants and the people who own those plants and operate those plants. But number one priority is loss of life. And right now, there was no loss of life, which is, of course, like I said, the most important thing out of any natural disaster, especially a tornado.
Yeah, Trevor, that is good news, because when we're looking at the damage here in the extent, I think I see some there that's over your right shoulder too as well, Trevor, but also we're looking at the CBS Texas chopper shot here within studio. When you see the damage, and Michael, I can ask you this question just from a meteorologist perspective, we're seeing trees that are complete, and full-size trees too as well, mature trees that are snapped over completely. We're seeing homes that have been completely almost destroyed. And you can see here those wind gusts must have been powerful to snap mature trees over completely in half and just blow, excuse me, roofs off of homes. That is powerful.
That's very strong. I mean, you know, when you see the trees toppled over, you could say, all right, maybe that alone was straight line winds. But when you see all over the roofs leveled, buildings collapse, I mean, that's not something that's capable of, you know, an 80 mile per hour wind gust. Those are wind gusts excessive over 100, 120 miles per hour. So I'd be very shocked if the data didn't show at least an EF2 tornado over there.
Yeah, when we're looking at just the wide scale scope of the damage, you can just see home after business after business that looks like no stone really was unturned here whenever this storm passed through this area. It's almost like similar to a domino effect. I mean, when winds came in, every single structure seems like it received some type or felt some type of impact or damage here. The cleanup effort for this, it's going to be long-standing. It's going to take a long time to clean this area up.
Oh, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's not going to happen in weeks. It's going to take a long time. I mean, almost every single house that we're seeing on there is completely, has some type of damage, whether it's the roof collapse, whether it's, damage from debris that was thrown onto the property. When you get really strong winds over 100 miles per hour, I mean, it's going to lift debris and, kind of throw it all over. It's going to get it into other houses. And take a look at that house over there.
Unrecognizable.
Exactly. It looks like it wasn't even there. You can even see earlier when we saw the chopper, kind of zooming around some of the houses are still standing, but there's no roof on it. You can see all the walls just from a bird's eye view, and it's just really scary to see the strength of a tornado. But I think we have to be very grateful that there's so far no fatalities.
Yeah, and if you're living in this area and perhaps you plan on returning back home this morning, just a reminder to just be really careful, because when you see damage like this and a storm of this size has impacted your area, well, you got to think about the down power lines too, of course, and a lot of the debris there. It is very dangerous to come back when it's in this state until cleanup crews can, of course, come and visit this area and help to clean up what is left behind here. We also think about this area being west of Fort Worth. If you're not familiar with this area, this is Mineral Wells, which is in Palo Pinto County, but this is home to 15,000 residents in this area. This is impacted here over last night's hours. Like you said, when we get these alerts to our phones, it is a little bit alarming and it's scary, but it is important, of course, to keep the CBS News Texas app, obviously to just stay weather ready, but just to listen to those alerts too, because you don't want to be caught in the middle of a storm like this, right, Michael?
And definitely not. And that's why they said in the warehouse that collapsed that everyone was evacuated because they heeded to the warnings and they listened. It would have been a whole different story if no one evacuated, if that building would have collapsed with people inside. You never want something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't. We're seeing some crews, it looks like they're on the ground that are kind of surveying a little bit of the extent of the damage, possibly even employees or owners of some of these business structures that are coming back to just kind of see what the extent of the damage is going to be, what repair might look like in this area too. And then on the side of here, it looks like Chopper is trying to show us again some more residential areas with some of these homes. Look at this one here to the left. This home, the doorway is completely closed off. You couldn't even try to get through the front door if you wanted to. Looks like also there to the left, the left side structure too there, the roof is completely gone. And then it looks like towards the backyard of this entire residential structure, the backside of these homes also blown through by strong winds. Trees just snapped over and completely toppled over. It's dangerous.
And Carmen, if you look at this, it almost looks like a hurricane blew through this area. Hurricane force winds, and I think that's what happened. We definitely had some very strong wind gusts. An EF1 to an EF3 tornado. I mean, you could see wind gusts up to 100 to 140 miles per hour. I mean, we just saw some of those houses that aren't even going to be able to be repaired. I mean, they're total losses for sure.
For sure. I know that Trevor Sohaki was moved by crews from his original location when he was with us earlier this morning, but I do see to the right side of your screen, Chopper is showing us some police crews that are blocking off this roadway here, and it's probably from people being able to come in or out of this area again, while it looks like crews are trying to survey a lot of this damage and deem it safe for residents to come back into this community too, just to be sure, again, that everybody is staying safe. The damage here to Mineral Wells is truly, it's jarring. When you think about being at the front end of severe storm season here in North Texas, and we start out in April with a storm of this size to come through this area and see how people have lost a lot. It's a little bit heartbreaking, Michael.
Heartbreaking for sure, and kind of devastating to see damage like that. I want to talk about the storm reports that we saw outside Tuesday. These are all preliminary. I mean, once we see the National Weather Service go and survey the data, survey the storm damage of what we're seeing, seeing, I mean, I would be very surprised if it wasn't a tornado. I mean, it looks like we saw very, very strong winds across portions of, you know, into Mineral Wells. Now, as far as the preliminary reports, there was only one report of a tornado. That means that someone saw it and reported it, and that was up in Clay County. No one saw the tornado in Mineral Wells, but I mean, it's very evident that it looks like, you know, that's what moved through. I mean, when you see trees completely leveled, you could say, all right, maybe that was from straight line winds. But when you see houses completely destroyed, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, it looks like a hurricane moved through that area, but this was the strength of a tornado. I mean, EF2, EF3, when you have winds between 100 to 140 miles per hour, that's what happens. In combination with the tornado threat that we saw yesterday, we also saw some tornado warnings out to the south, near Hill, near Johnson County as well. I think the National Weather Service is going to go there and survey the data as well. But notice the storm reports, lots of hail yesterday. I mean, we saw hail anywhere from golf ball sized hail to ping pong ball sized hail. And overall, we did see a lot of the, you know, these hail reports across our area yesterday, and pretty much for all areas, even those that didn't see the tornado warnings, definitely saw some big hail. Let's talk about the hail sizes, right? 2 3/4 of an inch of a size diameter hail, that's a baseball. We saw a hail that was 3.5 inches in diameter into portions of Johnson County. And what that is hail that is just a little bit smaller than a softball. So again, just keep that in mind. We saw very big hail outside. Penelope picking up hail 2 3/4 of an inch. That's baseball size hail. 2.5 inch hail in Hill. Grandview, 2 inch hail. Benbrook, 1 1/4 inch of hail as well. Outside right now, though, fortunately, things are on the quiet side as we begin our morning. We're seeing a lot of clouds outside. Overall, it's going to be a quieter day. There is a severe weather threat for today, but it's mainly out to our south and east. It does include portions of the Metroplex, and we could see some marginally severe hail as well as some marginally severe damaging winds, but nothing like we saw yesterday. We're breezy this morning, gusts right around 24 miles per hour. Temperatures are into the 60s, 60 right now in Fort Worth, 62 in Dallas. I mean, we're seeing temperatures into the 50s up across our Red River counties. So we do have that level 1 risk to even a level 2 risk out to our southeast. So just keep that in mind that some locations do have the threat to see some strong to severe storms. What you're seeing to the left of me is the damage that took place from these severe storms yesterday into Mineral Wells. I mean, completely leveled some neighborhoods. I mean, there's houses that were completely destroyed, trees, debris blown all over. You could see all of the wood on the ground. We saw pipes that were thrown. And again, this is the strength when you hear of a tornado that you can see. I mean, you'll see winds that'll gust 100 to 140, 150 miles per hour. I mean, hurricane force winds potentially moved through this area yesterday, and we're going to get the official amounts from the National Weather Service as they go and survey the data. So we do have a severe weather threat for today for portions of North Texas, but again, it is nothing like what we saw outside yesterday. Hour by hour throughout the day for today, by noon we see temperatures getting up into the 60s, and then by the second half of the day for today, we do see just about a 20 to a 30% chance to see any severe storms develop. So yeah, Carmen, you know, we saw a lot of this widespread damage outside in Mineral Wells. You know, completely tore apart lots of neighborhoods, and overall, it certainly wasn't a good situation there in Mineral Wells, and a lot of other areas across North Texas definitely saw you know, some severe hail, and we could even have other confirmed reports of tornadoes once the National Weather Service goes and surveys the data outside for today. You will notice on our significant hail threat, again, well out to the southeast for today. I'm not expecting us to see any of that hail here in North Texas or in those areas that did pick up widespread damage yesterday. One of our models, our high resolution model throughout the day for today, it is trying to pick up at least some of a storm threat later on this afternoon, and I think it's a little bit overdone, but we will start to see more of a severe weather threat as we move ahead into the tomorrow time frame. And overall, we are expecting to see tomorrow just mainly some rain. The severe weather threat goes away. The severe weather threat later today is mainly for areas south and east. As we look ahead to Friday, we are watching it for a cool rain that will develop and move through area wide, generally starting right around late morning into the early afternoon. And overall, though, throughout the day for today, we do see the isolated thunderstorm threat. 30% chance I think we will see some storms develop. Temperatures into those middle to upper 60s. And overall, in your first alert 7-day forecast, we see isolated storms outside today. A cool rain into the forecast. forecast by Friday, and we have 2 wet days ahead of us, but we're not expecting any additional severe weather after today. Temperatures will be into the 70s on Saturday, middle 70s by Sunday, and then looking ahead into next week, we will start to see temperatures be up into those lower to middle 80s area-wide. So overall, we were tracking all of that damage that took place in Mineral Wells, and we're going to get some reports today from the National Weather Service to see and survey all of that damage.
That's right. Michael, you said we're still waiting from the National Weather Service to determine officially whether or not a tornado impacted this area. Of course, we'll learn more information on that from the National Weather Service later on today, but we want to go back to showing you live footage this morning from our CBS Texas chopper that is flying over Mineral Wells. If you're just now joining us on the CBS Texas stream, Mineral Wells is just west of Fort Worth. This is in Palo Pinto County, and right now at 8:20, you can see that a lot of damage here within this area from this storm that hit last night. Take a look at what looks like this business structure. It almost looks as if the wind and the storm that passed through here opened up these businesses and homes like a treasure box and just took everything inside of these structures out of it and pulled it out onto the front, back, and side lawns here of these properties. The damage that we're seeing from these live aerial views are just extensive, and it's widespread for miles and miles and miles. It almost looks like every single structure has almost been impacted in some way. We're looking at the debris and the extent of that debris that has been blown all over the ground and all over the roadways too as well. Earlier we also saw what looked like some police cruisers that were blocking off the front end of a street or a community there in this neighborhood, and it looks like they're trying to monitor who is able to come in and who is able to come out. Usually when we do see that, it's because a lot of crews are still there kind of surveying the damage and making sure that it is safe for those residents to return back to this community. But we do have a crew that is there live this morning in Mineral Wells, giving us the very latest there on the ground. So we want to go back over to Trevor Sohaki. Trevor, you have been there all morning long, and you are getting a front row seat to the extent of this damage. Tell us there what you're seeing and if you've talked to anyone while you've been there.
Well, Carmen, I believe you're probably actually getting a better front row seat, if you will, to all the damage, because the police that you were just talking about, they've put up barricades all over. In fact, we had to get a police escort into this industrial park behind me earlier this morning in order to even see anything that was happening. And so with your chopper, with our chopper view, you're able to get a closer look at all the buildings and the neighborhoods that have seen damage, because earlier this morning, we were really only able to see the industrial area and the factories that got damaged. We were not able to see the neighborhoods that got damaged. But I do want to show you what we were able to see this morning. We've been pushed back so far, but if you look behind me, I'm going to see how far photographer Andy Abbott is able to zoom in. That is the view from the ground. This is how far we've been pushed back, because we're told that first responders are coming into this industrial area right now. What it appeared to me, excuse me, is that the power crews were working all throughout the night into this morning. We've seen them coming in and out. There's one actually coming out right now, and it looks like they had to clear all of the power lines and make sure that there wasn't any harm to any first responders that would come into the area. And now that the power crews have mostly moved out, the first responders can move in, and they can hopefully start doing the work of clearing away the debris from those neighborhoods, because right next to this industrial area is a neighborhood. It's not a huge neighborhood, is what we're told from the officials here, but there are people who were, of course, impacted last night by all of those storms. I'm going to step back in right now, so we're going to have to zoom out a little bit, but hopefully you're able to get a pretty good look at the industrial area from our view right now. Again, we were pushed back to this line. We were actually up there earlier this morning, able to really get a good look at the factories and everything that were impacted by last night's either heavy winds or possible tornado. Again, we're going to have to wait on that. But like you said, completely leveled. This would be, I don't know, maybe the 4th or 5th tornado that I've covered in my lifetime thus far, and everyone appears the same. It all appears the same. It just levels the entire area, and that is what I saw back there. Really, without any, it's indiscriminate, if you will. There is no rhyme or reason as to where it's going. It just barrels right through, tears everything apart in its path, and that is what we saw back there, Carmen.
Trevor, we have seen or heard from a couple of different residents within this area that we played some sound from them earlier this morning that are coming back to the damage there that we see in Mineral Wells. I'm not sure if you've been able to talk to anybody while you've been there, but you started out earlier this morning there where it was still dark. Now it's light outside, obviously, with the sun coming up. Talk about the scale of this damage. And we see it, obviously, and it is extensive, but our concern here is really with the people that this impacts. 15,000 residents. I mean, to be at the start of a severe storm season here in North Texas and to start out in April with a storm of this size, talk about how this has people feeling unsettled and quite frankly devastated.
Yeah, I mean, we talked with people last night. Unfortunately, because we've kind of been limited in our area that we've been allowed to go this morning, we haven't been able to really speak to as many residents this morning. But last night, I mean, people were already shocked at what happened. We talked with an 18-year-old who was on the bus home from school when he saw everything happening, and he had to help some of the younger kids on the bus get to safety. They have a reunification area. They had a reunification area at the high school yesterday. So clearly a lot of people still trying to put all the pieces together. And unfortunately, we were not able to get back into the neighborhood over there where I think you're seeing a lot of the destruction. The police and the fire would not let us get through this. The furthest we could get to was the industrial area, where again, thankfully, there weren't any injuries or any fatalities in that area. However, you asked about just the devastation, the amount of the destruction. I mean, it's clear, like you can go up to it and you can stand right there and you can see where a plant would have been. You can go on to Google Maps if you want and look up the businesses. You can go onto Street View and look up the businesses that were there and then take a look at what it looks like right now. Pull up that side by side and you can see just the amount of debris and wood and columns and pieces of metal that are just scattered all over that area. And earlier this morning, the power poles that were down as well all across that area. So it really is evident when you're on the ground just how powerful these winds are. And even if, even if you're just driving along the road and you're not going back into the damaged areas because it is blocked off, there are still along the road here trees, big trees, large branches that have been ripped apart, ripped out of their trunk. So it is clear, even if you're just driving along the road here as a passenger, as a resident who's trying to see what's going on, it's clear that a lot came through last night and there's a lot of cleanup to do, Carmen.
We think about how many families this impacted too. We know that schools there are likely also shut down too, as well as crews try to repair a lot of the damage and just start the cleanup process, right?
So schools, we have not heard anything about schools being damaged. We do know actually though that Mineral Wells ISD has said that school is in session. The biggest impact is going to be on any students that may have had any kind of home damage or anything like that. That would impact them, and the district has said that if a student is impacted, if they can't get to school because of some blockade or if their house has been damaged, that absence will be excused. But Mineral Wells ISD has said that it does plan on still having school today for all of those students. I would expect, though, that it probably would, obviously if a student has been impacted by the blockade or by any kind of home damage, that absence, like I said, it would be excused. We might find out more later today. hopefully this press conference that they're having at 11 o'clock will provide some more answers to that if there are any impacts to schools, Carmen.
Okay, Trevor Sohaki live for us this morning in Mineral Wells. Trevor, thank you so much for your excellent coverage of the storm that we felt last night there in that community. Thank you. We appreciate it. We want to take you back now to our live view this morning with our CBS Texas chopper flying over Mineral Wells this morning, looking at the widespread damage within this area. Businesses in a large industrial area here where the storm has impacted this community here. Winds ripping through a lot of these sturdy, strong, and large-scale structures just goes to show you the extent of those very high, what Michael referred to as almost hurricane force winds here. We are waiting for the National Weather Service to get to this area in order to properly determine if this was in fact a tornado that touched down within this community. But if you're just now joining us in the stream, and you're not familiar with this area, this is west of Fort Worth, Mineral Wells, which is in Palo Pinto County here. This is home to about 15,000 residents that live within this area. And so far, what we're learning is that only 2 people, fortunately, were seriously injured in this and, of course, are being treated at the hospital. But no fatalities have been confirmed so far. What we also know is that there is a lot of extensive damage here. And if you could look here at a lot of these shots, it seems like almost every single structure has been touched or impacted in some way by this storm that blew through last night. We know that alerts went off and a lot of people were able to either evacuate before they knew that the storms were coming or to get into shelter in place in order for them to be safe. But you cannot obviously protect your home or your business to the extent that you could yourself and your family. So what we're looking at is the aftermath of a storm of this size that has completely ripped through this area. Some of these structures almost completely unrecognizable, as we can see. Possible gas leaks is what this city is dealing with this morning. They were also trying to treat some down power lines in this area too as well, and a lot of debris. The cleanup for a storm of this size is extensive, and it takes large-scale organizations and crews in order to come here to these communities and help to pick up what obviously has been damaged and a lot of stuff that's been left behind here too. We know that police crews were in this area earlier this morning, obviously patrolling, blocking off some streets here until it was deemed safe in order for residents to return. There was a curfew that was in place overnight last night after this storm blew through. It was lifted about 2 hours ago at about 6 o'clock this morning. But we do see that there are a lot of residents that are starting to return to their homes and kind of scowl around their property and look at the damage here. But looking at it from a bird's eye view, you could see rubble, debris is covering what looks like used to be green patches of grass, and now it quite frankly looks all mangled up like it's a bunch of wood, bricks, and debris here. Every single home almost looks completely touched by high winds. Michael says that we're well over 70 miles an hour here. We are talking about strong force winds, EF1 likely tornado, if not an EF2. We'll find out that from the National Weather Service later. But a lot of homes, this community as well as businesses have been impacted by this storm. It is the beginning of severe storm season here in North Texas. So when we talk about the amount of people that have impacted by this storm and so early on in the storm season, it is devastating, if we're being honest. We are going to take a quick break, but you are watching the CBS News Texas stream. We do have our CBS Texas chopper flying live over Mineral Wells for us this morning. We'll be right back. And we are still live this morning with our CBS Texas chopper flying over Mineral Wells this morning, where major impacts of a storm that blew through this area are being felt this morning. We're taking a look at the extensive damage across this area here. Now, if you're just now joining us on the stream, welcome back. This city is west of Fort Worth in Palo Pinto County. Mineral Wells is home to about 15,000 residents within this community. After these storms blew through last night, so far what we're learning from officials is that two residents were seriously hurt. They are being, of course, treated for their injuries, but no fatalities have been confirmed. And that's the bit of good news within this, a lot of the bright spot here in this. So what we're looking at is the scope of this damage within this area. Multiple, if not dozens, of structures. We're talking about businesses and also residential areas, homes that have been damaged. Some of them almost completely deemed a total loss. Others, it just looks like a lot of the roof was blown off. A lot of the structures that were in the yard, ways, trees almost completely snapped in half and leaned over. Down power lines. We're also learning possible gas leaks within this area too, but just so much debris in this area. We've seen search crews as well as cleanup crews coming in and out of these neighborhoods, trying to survey and assess the damage, and of course some organizations that are also on their way in order to help a lot of these residents that live within these communities too as well. We know that there was a curfew that was in place overnight. It's since been lifted about 2.5 hours ago, right at 6 o'clock this morning. But residents within this area, as we can see, are pulling back up to their homes, possibly from having evacuated this area overnight, and are now returning back to the community now that the sun is up, and looking to see what the damage looks like at their home here. So we see these cars that are parked outside and people that are kind of walking around their yards and trying to assess the damage. But when we talk about storms of this size, and we're talking about winds that were as powerful as they were, a lot of these homes are seeing damage that is going to take weeks, if not months, in order to repair. A lot of these homes' roofs were completely ripped off. A lot of their property was blown into yards that were yards and yards away over. And we're also seeing businesses that will not likely be able to reopen for some time too either. So we have seen some police crews that have blocked off some of these streets too as well. And we've also seen other crews that are allowing people to come in and out, whether or not that's crews that are there to clean up or that's residents. It's hard to be able to tell from this aerial view up high above. But what we do know is that folks are trying to make it back to this community this morning and see the widespread damage that has been felt here in Mineral Wells. Again, 15,000 residents live just within this area that was hit by this powerful storm that blew through yesterday. We had some crews that were out there for us on the ground talking with residents just last night that said that they feel the devastation this morning, and it's heavy because a lot of them are so close. They feel like they all know one another, and so whenever they see someone's home is as damaged as it is, or their businesses are as damaged as there is, and they won't be able to quickly repair it or reopen right away, it certainly is devastating and heartbreaking for this community. I want to bring in First Alert meteorologist Michael Ottavino into this morning, because Michael, we are waiting for the National Weather Service to determine whether or not this was in fact a tornado that hit this area, but we are seeing wide impacts from this storm.
Yes, Carmen, that's right. I mean, when you see trees toppled over, you think, okay, maybe that's some straight line wind damage. But when you see homes completely leveled, homes completely destroyed, the roofs off of these homes, some homes or businesses that were completely, completely collapsed. I mean, that's like damage that you see from a tornado. It looks like a hurricane moved through that area when you see those winds that strong. I reached out to the National Weather Service this morning to get some kind of estimate of, how strong these winds winds may have been based on radar data, based on what the radar actually looked like compared to other storms or other tornadoes that they've seen. And they estimated anywhere from about 100 to 140 mile per hour wind speeds, and anywhere from an EF1 to an EF3 tornado based on all of the damage as well. So that's not official. It is unconfirmed. It's preliminary data, as the National Weather Service will go there, survey the data, and then we'll get some official reports later on. Now, no one necessarily saw the tornado move through Mineral Wells. At least there wasn't any reports of it. There was one tornado report that was up in Clay County, and the National Weather Service will go and take a look at that today. But overall, we saw 68 reports of very large hail. We saw hail as small as nickel and pea-sized to as big as nearly softball-sized hail, especially well out to the south in portions of Hill County. So again, certainly saw that into Johnson County as well. We saw 7 reports of some very strong winds. We saw some severe winds as well. Some of those severe thunderstorms that did produce those very strong winds were over 70 to 75 miles per hour. And you could see all the different reports of hail, or whether it was a tornado or those wind damage behind me. But you could see the predominant thing that we saw yesterday was widespread hail. Take a look at that damage really quick on the left-hand side of your screen. You're seeing, again, homes completely destroyed, roofs completely ripped off of some houses. You're seeing widespread debris in all areas, and we also are continuing to see, again, you can see that house pretty much completely destroyed. I mean, you think rebuilding, but some of these houses were destroyed so bad that they won't be able to rebuild them. I mean, you know, a lot of this city, a lot of this town, you know, completely almost wiped away or destroyed based on, you know, what looks like a tornado that did move through yesterday. Fortunately, people paid attention to the warnings. They heard the sirens. They evacuated. You know, one of the businesses that pretty much collapsed, they said that everyone was out of there because they evacuated ahead of the timing. That's why when we say, you know, you want to head to your tornado safe place, you don't want to be in a mobile home. You don't want to be in an RV because, you know, look what could potentially happen. I mean, these are solid structures. That's a brick house, and the roof is completely gone. So if you think about a mobile home, an RV, I mean, that's going to get completely swept away by a tornado or very strong winds. And this is the strength of some of these storms here in North Texas when we had a level 4 moderate risk outside yesterday, and we saw some tornado warnings, and even the tornado threat. It wasn't a pretty high tornado threat. The highest threat yesterday was for some very large hail, and that's what we saw outside. I mean, you know, lots of areas in Mineral Wells are completely destroyed, and fortunately it looks like lives were spared. As of right now, still no confirmed reports of any deaths. We saw 2 injuries, fortunately, and hopefully it stays that way. Fingers crossed. We never want to see that, but again, you could see the widespread damage across Mineral Wells. I mean, that roof completely you know, ripped off. We're taking that full screen. I mean, that house, maybe they could rebuild it. Right. Maybe they could rebuild part of it. But Carmen, I mean, I think a lot of these houses are pretty much you know, completely destroyed.
There is no doubt this is a tough morning for anyone in Mineral Wells after what looks like, Michael, as you're saying, an apparent tornado possibly touched down on Tuesday evening. We just have our CBS chopper that is flying over this area with all this damage that we're seeing. And what we're looking at is a lot of crews that are on the ground right now this morning. You see so many of them, and they're just doing a great job of trying to survey the damage first, because that's what you have to do in these situations. You have to survey the damage first, understand the landscape of these areas, and then go in with the best safety approach to make sure everybody's safe with picking up the debris that is extensive as this, with repairing down power lines. And we're also talking about possible gas leaks too within this area too, because of the extent of this damage.
And then you could see some explosions too, you know, from you know, just from getting everyone. Look at, I mean, look at that White House, dangerous. You know, in the center of the screen. I mean, Carmen, there's not even a roof there anymore.
We're not sure exactly what's happening with the shot from chopper, but earlier, I just want to talk about this image that is stuck at the front of my mind here. We were zoomed in on what looked like a couple that was just now getting to their home, possibly from being gone overnight while these storms passed through, and they were outside what looked like in their driveway, pulling everything that was inside their garage outside while they're pacing on the phone, right? You can imagine yourself being in this situation as these folks that are returning to this area where their homes and their livelihood was. And to see all of your belongings being blown outside of your home and scattered all over your community, you just start to think and make phone calls, and you kind of black out for a moment and just think, what am I going to do next?
You know, it's a devastating moment, you know? It's a traumatic moment, really.
And it is devastating. We're seeing dozens of crews that are on the ground here. It is remarkable to see everybody come together and really try to help these folks in what looks like is going to be a long-standing cleanup effort, and also a repair to a lot of these areas too as well. But we have seen as streets and streets over, a lot of residents that are coming back to their homes, looking around the outside of their property, trying to pull what looks like what's recoverable outside and sort of pack it up, if you will, and see what it is that they can do with it, what's salvageable, and of course what is not. We talk about the winds that were so extensive to a storm that passed through this area. There's no doubt in my mind these winds were so strong. When you see a tree that is completely mature, a cedar tree that is completely mature, that is snapped down all the way at the bottom by the root, you think, wow, how fast was that wind blowing?
I mean, Carmen, you have to think at least over 100 miles per hour for sure. You know, I reached out to the National Weather Service earlier, and I said, you know, based on what we saw, are there any estimates of what we can, you know, determine from the radar? I was trying to get the radar data, you know, here in-house, and I saw, you know, 60, 70 miles per hour, but, you know, they have, you know, more extensive ways to figure out how strong those winds were based on, you know, some of their data. And they said estimating anywhere from 100 to 140 miles per hour, maybe anything from as low as an EF1 to possibly an EF3 tornado. I mean, looking at everything, you know, but like I mentioned earlier, Carmen, you see trees rooted, you see trees broken, you think, okay, maybe straight line winds. But when you see homes completely leveled, buildings collapsed, I mean, things completely destroyed, it looked like, you know, winds of that of a hurricane, you know, 150, 160 mile per hour winds. You know, not saying we saw that. Again, it's all unconfirmed, but that's the strength of what these tornadoes can do. That's why we say, you know, to evacuate. They said that, you know, we didn't see any deaths from this tornado, and the reason for that, you know, is because people evacuated. People heeded to the warnings. People listened, and that's the biggest thing, and that's how you spare lives in situations like this. You know, we saw that warehouse collapsed, and the reason, look at that one. I mean, the reason why people's lives were saved was because they evacuated, you know?
And it just goes to show you, too, that people listened to those warnings, and especially within this area, and they were also paying attention to the alerts that were going out as well, just to make sure they kept their families safe. I want to talk again about the damage that we're seeing from the CBS Texas chopper. You can see the pool there on the left-hand side of the screen that was in the backyard, and a lot of the debris from the roof that looked like it was completely ripped off and then just thrown right there on top of the pool and also in the backyard. We're panning over just to what looks like the east side of this town too as well, just to look at some more damage. But earlier we saw what looked like almost a domino effect. This wind came in and blew almost every single structure down, if not over, and took a lot of the debris and scattered it all around this community along with it. We're seeing home after home after home with what looks like the backyards that are completely demolished, and a lot of homes and structures that are just decimated.
And, you know, Carmen, it'll be interesting to see when the official report comes out, you know, from the National Weather Service, you know, if it was, you know, most likely will be a tornado, you know, what was the path? I mean, we're seeing homes upon homes that were completely damaged. I mean, if you look at this, there's not many homes that were spared. You know, we saw the tornado this past weekend up in Runaway Bay in Wise County, and we looked at some of the videos and images. You know, there were homes that were spared. You know, you had some homes that were spared, but here it looks like there's complete widespread damage and devastation. So, you know, we got to see the track of this, and, you know, it could have, you know, spanned. It could have been definitely maybe a little bit stronger. You know, no damage is good at all by any comparison, but, you know, it's just crazy to see that there wasn't even any homes spared in this community.
No, and again, we were kind of, our chopper was kind of zoomed in on a couple of different shots of some families that were visiting their homes again this morning and kind of looking around at all the damage too there as well. We also have crews that are live there in Mineral Wells for us this morning on the ground, seeing the damage front and center for themselves. But we also had some folks that talked to us last night about this community, what it means to them, and just to see the devastation that this storm had an impact on in this community and how they're feeling this morning now that the sun is up and this damage is now front and center. It's not undeniable. Trevor Sohaki, we want to go back to you just so we can talk to you about what you've seen this morning and how our crews are responding, what the cleanup efforts there are looking like as you're live there on the ground.
I mean, the cleanup efforts are ongoing here, Carmen. Really, we have seen crews in and out of this area behind me. Right behind me, this is that industrial zone that you've probably seen on chopper video already many, many times. It has basically seen the worst part of the damage here in Mineral Wells, entirely wiped out. And there is a neighborhood right next to it as well that we were not able to access. Police are not letting us access that neighborhood just yet, but we do know that that saw some damage as well. Like you said, we have seen a ton of just downed power lines. We've seen debris all over the place. Like you've already talked about, we've seen trees that have gotten branches and huge chunks ripped out of them. Really what we've seen from a lot of tornadoes that I have covered in the past, this is exactly what it looks like. My unprofessional opinion, it looks like we had a tornado roll through here, at least from what everything I can tell. But like I said, it really in this industrial area, these factories look like they were just ripped to pieces. Thankfully, as we've talked about before already, no fatalities. That search and rescue effort, which we have also seen come through as well. We've seen first responders in and out of here. We've seen those crews come in and out of here. It appears those crews, those power crews, were really making sure that the area was safe before any first responders went in. But when I talked with the police chief a couple hours ago, he said no fatalities, just a couple people who were injured and then had to go to the hospital. So we're hoping that continues. Of course, we're going to get more information later today in a couple hours or so. There's going to be a press conference, and we hopefully will hear updates, and hopefully it'll be all good news. But again, just massive devastation. Thankfully, as we've already talked about already, they were able to get, I think it was 120 employees out of one of the factories that are in this industrial park behind me. So it's really just a testament to people following the advice of meteorologists like Michael and the team at CBS News Texas, and really making sure that everyone followed the instructions and got to safety, because a lot of people here, I'm sure, are waking up unclear about what they're supposed to do today when they might not have a home. At least they have their family and they have their own 2 feet, but maybe they don't have a home. Maybe they suffered some kind of damage. Maybe at the very least, you know, they have a car that has some softball-sized hail chunks inside of it, and now they got to go to insurance. But again, thankfully, it could have been a lot worse, and it was not.
Yeah, Trevor, with the storm of this size and the damage that we're seeing here from aerial views of our CBS Texas chopper, we're fortunate enough to report here at CBS News Texas that there were, in fact, no fatalities. When you look at a storm with damage like this, you think of what it took in place in order for people to make sure that they were safe. So yes, you're right. We are certainly thankful for our First Alert Weather team for trying to let everyone know to find a safe place to shelter in place. We know that you've been there all morning long, but we also had a crew that was there in Mineral Wells last night after the storm flew in. Talk about how this has impacted folks there in the community. I want to hear from you about what people that live in this community are feeling this morning. We know that we talked to one young man last night, and if I remember correctly, he was saying that he knows a lot of these people where their homes and their businesses were impacted, and he feels a heaviness, a devastation this morning.
I mean, you can understand where he's coming from, right, Carmen? I have never experienced a tornado firsthand, thankfully, knock on wood, and a lot of people have not experienced a tornado firsthand. You see it on the news, you see it on TV, you see it on social media, you see these funnel clouds, and you think, wow, that looks really scary. Thankfully, I'm not there, right? To go through it is a whole nother beast. It's a whole nother ball game. You have no idea what's going to happen. You're hiding in the middle of your home. You're trying to put as many walls between you and the exterior as possible. If you have a basement, you're inside that basement, or your storm cellar, whatever you might have. Then you come out and you have to figure out what's going on. And for a lot of the people in Mineral Wells that weren't impacted, they now have the tough job of trying to help out the people who were impacted. I was just actually on the City of Mineral Wells Facebook page. They're organizing donations and collecting donations for the people who were impacted by this. And that young man that we did speak to last night, his story is also pretty incredible. It's a testament to the good graces and the goodwill of the people here in Mineral Wells. He told us last night he was on the bus back from school when he heard everything that was happening. He looked out the window of the bus and he saw what he said was a tornado. The bus turned around, went back to school, unloaded everyone, and he had to help these young kids, these young students. I mean, think about the kids on a bus. You have everyone from 18-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 10-year-olds on the bus. He had to help all the kids get home safely. Thankfully, of course, I'm sure the parents are very, very happy about that. They were able to get home safely. But that's an experience that I know I've never had. I don't know if you've ever had that kind of experience, Carmen, having to run to safety in the middle of a tornado. But unfortunately, last night, it was probably an experience that a lot of people here in Mineral Wells did have to have.
Yeah, that's right, Trevor. We want to thank you so much, but you're also certainly right. Anytime severe weather season hits North Texas, we know that things can change in a matter of minutes, if not seconds. So it's certainly important that it sounds like a lot of these residents definitely heeded to that warning that bad weather was on the way, and were able to step in and kind of help one another out. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up our CBS Texas stream, we want to show you again this live aerial footage from our CBS Texas chopper that is flying over Mineral Wells this morning. We're looking at the extensive and widespread damage over this area that's being felt in this community that's home to 15,000 residents. Like you just heard Trevor reporting earlier, only 2 people that we're learning so far have been taken to the hospital to be treated for injuries, that is, but no fatalities have been confirmed. Again, crews are obviously on the ground trying to work on the cleanup efforts here as well, but a lot of residents feeling the devastation from the damage we're seeing this morning. We'll be back here again at CBS News Texas News at 11.